it cannot be applied on a gross competition. The reason we feel the need to talk about this, and it's been a hot topic for the last couple of years here, is that we want to foster more playing options. We recognize that a lot of times people have events where they set it up so that anybody can only play from the white tees or only from the blue tees. Well, we need to create more options for our players. The reality is that our golfers are diverse and especially from an age perspective, from young to later in their life. And as we get older, we can't hit the ball as far, but we want equal opportunity to still play in these events that we cherish, that are part of our clubs. And if the event is only going to be played from the longer set of tees, most likely we will be discouraged from wanting to play in those events in the future. So Section 3-5 kind of allows for people to play from those forward tees and still be equity in the competition among everybody who is playing that day. So we absolutely encourage people to use Section 3-5. And if people are going to be playing from different sets of tees, it is mandatory that 3-5 is applied in the system. And then lastly, as just I was talking about, it is a fantastic way of increasing participation. As we all know, that golf, some records have shown that golf participation has been on a decline. Obviously, maybe because of time and money, but I also think that part of the reason is that we encourage people to play from tees that are longer than they are capable of. And so if we can allow people to play from tees that they are comfortable with and still be able to get the amount of strokes that they need to against the rest of the competition, 3-5 accomplishes that, and I would hope that people would take a look at this to open that up in their competitions. All right, before we can really get into 3-5, we need to kind of understand how the handicap is formed. Oddly enough, this comes up a lot when we have conversation with clubs about 3-5, and that the number one thing we hear is that, hey, XYZ wants to play from the forward tees, and everybody's playing from the back tees, but that XYZ golfer says, well, how can that work if I've established my handicap from no set of tees? Well, the reality is that that is not true. As you can see the top line here, the USGA Handicap Index is universal. You can take that to any golf course, to any set of tees, and you can figure out what your course handicap is for that day. Nobody establishes their handicap from one set of tee. It is impossible because every set of tee in every golf course is rated using the USGA Handicap course rating system that carries a rating and slope that is translated into a differential that carries anywhere, which gives you your handicap index. So even if you play from that one set of tees over and over and over, you would still be utilizing the same system that everybody else is using in order to get the handicap index. So just keep in mind that no handicap is ever established from one set of tees. It is always universal because we are using the same system across the board. And with that, a handicap index is made up of differentials. As we just talked about, it's utilizing that full rating and slope for those set of tees that was evaluated by your state and regional golf association, like us at WSGA, when we go out and rate a golf course. And so a differential is made up, here's the formula if you haven't seen it before, is the adjusted gross score minus the rating times by 113, which is the standard slope across the country, and then divided by the slope of the day, and then rounded to the nearest tenth. If you ever take a quick, whether you're on your mobile app or deep into the handicap system, you'll see your score, but you always see a differential column, and that's evaluating the rating and the slope of the person and the tees they played that day to give you this number. Naturally, the system would continue on, taking the best 10 out of 20, and then multiplying by 0.96 to give you your index. But the point here is that, once again, it's kind of reiterating the point that you cannot establish a handicap from one set of tee, is that your rating and slope for those set of tees based on the system is all being calculated into this, so that excuse really does not exist. And lastly, we just talked about it, you just cannot make it from one set of tees, and that all course ratings across this country and, frankly, most of this world are utilizing the USGA course rating system, so it is universal across the board. All right, so some key points to Section 3-5 is that this procedure must be used when people are playing from different tees and there is a greater difference than 0.5 between the ratings of each tee. So if you have one tee that is a 72.0 and another tee that is a 71.4, there's a difference of 0.6, which would round to one stroke. So Section 3-5 would need to apply. Anything below that 0.5, it would not apply in that circumstance. Also, just like we talked about again, I think this is particularly important that no handicap index is set from a set of tees, and that all indexes are based on handicap differentials as we just spoke about. And also, slope rating alone does not account for the differences in expected scoring when players are competing from different tees and or course rating. This is a good point. When you utilize your 3-5, it's based on the rating and not on the slope rating. So that's what you're looking for. The key difference is the stroke differences between those ratings to make up that difference, because as you will see is that yardage makes up a huge difference in how we get our ratings. And so if you're playing for one set of tees and you're looking back at another guy who's way behind you, there's got to be some stroke differential going on there because they're playing such a longer golf course or you're playing a shorter golf course. So, competing from different tees using course rating. As you can see from this picture that you've got people teeing off from two different tee boxes. Well, it means it becomes very evident and apparent that there is a major yardage difference that would equally, would come into play in how somebody plays that hole and somebody being able to take advantage of a particular hole or holes in general because they're going to be hitting different clubs in those holes. It's a lot easier to hit into a golf hole with a wedge versus your playing partner who's playing way back that's hitting a 5-iron. There has to be some equity there to make up that difference, and that's where 3-5 comes into play. So this guy standing on the tee here is naturally asking, am I getting enough strokes here? Something doesn't add up. So when people do play from different tees, there has to be some kind of adjustment to equalize the golf course. So back to what I was saying, we need to figure out a way to equalize the golf course. So even though they're at the same facility, people that are playing from different tee boxes technically are playing different golf courses as well. And then lastly, distance is the #1 determining factor in course rating. So once again, to the point that distance is going to make a huge difference, and it becomes very evident as this guy's looking at each other. There's quite a difference between them just on one hole alone. So that will make a difference into that rating itself. 90 to 95% of all ratings are made just on distance alone. The rest of it is made from the obstacles when we go out and rate a golf course. So this guy's saying, hey, I'm going to stick here at the gold tees. This guy's saying, hey, this doesn't seem fair. There needs to be some equality going on here. And so that's what we're going to get into in the equation. So we've got an example here of Section 3-5. We've got Warren and Gary who are going to play two different tees. One's going to play the white and one's going to play the gold. For simplicity here, they each have a handicap index of 15.2. So Warren's going to play from the white tees, and he's got a course rating and slope of 72.8 and a 147. So utilizing that 147 slope for the tees he's playing, he's determined that he has a course handicap from the white tees of 20. Gary's going to play the gold tees, and the course rating and slope is 70.1, 125. So Gary's course handicap from the gold tees, that's the difference because you want to figure out the course handicap of the tees you are playing that for 125 is 17. So we can already see a key difference here is that their course handicaps by playing two separate tees is already different. One's a 20 and one's a 17. That doesn't even factor the fact that they are playing different golf courses. So we will get into that next. So the key here is that what do they need to shoot to the play to their handicap? So this kind of gets into the whole discussion of target score. So in this example, to figure out what they technically need to do to shoot their handicap and stick to the course rating, Warren, who's playing a golf course that has a rating of 72.8, would add the 20 strokes of his course handicap, which equals 93. So for him to shoot his target score that day, or his course handicap, to shoot his handicap would be, he would need to shoot a 93. Versus Gary, who's playing a golf course that's 70.1, he adds the 17 strokes he added to it, and his target score is now 87. As you can see, there's a difference of 6 strokes here. I think this is going to start making sense to you because we originally started with the course handicaps of 20 and 17. Well, how did we get the difference of the additional 3 strokes? Well, you'll see here very quickly is that it is the difference in the ratings, the 72.8, which we've got listed here in red, minus the 70.1, which gives you 2.7, which then rounds to 3. So using these arrows above, you can see based on their score, we're trying to all get to that same target score or net score to equalize the field. So utilizing the 20 from the 93 and then the 17 from the 87, we need to figure out the additional difference, and that is where the red arrow comes into play. That's the 3 strokes, and that will both get them to a net 70. So I hope this kind of makes sense that we're taking each of their course handicaps, but, and this will go back here, that Warren needs 3 additional strokes because he is playing a harder golf course. He's playing a longer golf course. So we have to equalize that competition. So he's going to get the additional 3 strokes, which you can see here. So Warren's course handicap now went from 20 plus the additional 3. That gives him 23. So now the competition equalized here as in these columns is that they both would shoot a net 70 if they both shot their course handicap for the day. Equally, this can be flipped around as well. So Warren could keep his 20, and Gary could reduce his handicap from 17 to 14, which would still maintain the difference in 6 strokes between them, and their net scores would equal at 73 and 73. So it doesn't matter what the net score ultimately comes out to as long as they're equal for both parties involved here. So the key here really is just take a look at the differences between the course rating, between each set of tees, figure out what the difference is, round to the nearest whole stroke, and then either add those strokes to the person that's playing the longer set of tees, or vice versa, remove those from the person playing from the shorter set of tees. Now, obviously, people don't like to lose strokes. And so we would hope that you would apply these strokes to the person that is playing on the longer set of tees. But there's one caveat to that. When you're having a competition, when there's a lot of people involved, you want to affect the least amount of people. Obviously, while we're trying to explain 3-5 to you that are on this webinar today, this is always a discussion period that people are trying to fully grasp this concept. And the reality is for you running those competition, you tournament chairs, you handicap chairs, you want the least amount of questions. So if you can affect the least amount and only affect a few, those are the few that you want to affect, whether it's adding strokes or reducing those. So just keep that in mind. And the tournament software will do that for you, and we'll talk about that here in a second. Before we get into that, let's talk about proper order of course handicap calculation. While I was going through that example, I was kind of pointing out some key things about calculating your course handicap and then going through. So what we're going to talk about is the 4 key steps here that are part of Section 9-4 of the USGA Handicap System, and this is very important. These are the proper steps that need to be taken in order to calculate the correct course handicap for people on a given day of a competition. So we already talked about before, step 1, you need to calculate your normal course handicap for the tees you are playing. So make sure that you are calculating based on, if I'm playing white, I need to figure out what my course handicap is for white. If I'm playing gold, I need to figure out what my course handicap will be for there. Good chance that the slope ratings will be very different from each of them, So you may have different numbers, even though you may share the same course, this handicap index with that individual, as you saw in the example. After you have that, then you need to apply any handicap allowances, if needed, for that day of competition. And we're talking about, let's say that you're having a best ball. Well, we know that men would be adjusted by 90% and women would be adjusted by 95%. So just keep in mind that first calculate course handicap and then apply those handicap allowances second. Step 3 is that on the off chance that you are playing a best ball competition and there is a stroke differential involved, the USGA recommends 8. But regardless of how many you use, if you fall outside of that stroke difference, then an additional 10% should be applied. And then the key point here is that Section 3-5, which we're discussing today, is the very last step applied. So keep in mind that this should never be applied at the front end, and it should always be the last adjustment to anybody's course handicap. All right. So while we're talking about, men maybe playing for, or women playing from each set of tees, we also have to factor in that this also applies if a man and a woman, let's say a couple, goes out and they both decide that, hey, we're both going to play the white tees for this evening. So there clearly has to be an adjustment between the two because of statistics show us that men typically can hit it farther than a woman. And so there's going to be varying differences clearly in any golf course and how they are rated, because men and women are rated using the USGA course rating system very differently. So the key point here is that if a woman and a man were going to play the same set of tees, if you look at the ratings and the slopes and compare the two against each other, most likely there would be a rating difference of about 5 strokes. That is the general average. Yes, it can vary from time to time, but in general, you would see a difference of 5 strokes. You would also see on average about a slope differential of 9. But when it comes to Section 3-5, the key point here is rating, not slope. Also, keep in mind that, as we spoke about, men and women are rated very differently utilizing the USGA course rating system. And that's because men hit it X amount of yards when we rate a golf course that is farther than the woman. So the woman may run into different issues more than the man, only because they're hitting it at different differences. And also keep in mind that distance is the #1 factor in course rating. And so a man hitting it farther will generally lower it versus a woman running into more issues will crank up that rating a bit. So that's where we see usually the difference of 5 strokes when they're playing from the same set of tees. So just keep that in mind, that it also needs to be applied here as well. So in summary, Section 3-5 only works for net competitions. So it will not work for gross competitions. And that is that if you do have a gross competition, there's no net, this will never apply. It only works on the net side. Also keep in mind that when you're using side games, whether those are KPs, KPs is the big one, that if you're going to use 3-5 where somebody's playing from the gold tees and a big group of people playing from the white tees, clearly, even though the handicapping side will work out, you can't do 3-5 to effectively affect that KP side, because each of those people are going to be hitting from different distances in the KP, and clearly if you're hitting from a shorter distance, you have a better chance of getting it closer than you do from the person that's hitting from a longer side. So you have a couple of options here. Either you could run 2 different pots, and let's say if there is a 2-tee example, where anybody playing from the gold tees, they will have their own KP game, and anybody playing from the whites will have their own additional KP game. That's one way you could do it. Another way you could do this is that in the example of having 2 tees involved, on the par 3s, you only use 1 tee for the whole field. So we will just say, hey, for hole 5, who's a par 3, and we want a KP game there, everybody's going to play from the whites. Now you say, wait a minute here, there must be a difference in the rating, and you're absolutely correct, there should be. So If you reference section 5.2G in the USGA Handicap System, you will see a chart, and it allows you to make a manual adjustment to the rating and slope, basically a temporary one, for that day of play. So let's say there is a difference of 40 yards between the tees, so you got to make up some kind of difference there. So if I reference my book and I go to the men's rating adjustment for unrated tees, and there's a difference of 40 yards between them, I see in the book that says that now you need to change the course rating of 0.2 and the slope rating of 0. So in this case, let's say the gold was the shorter tees and the white was the longer one. Everybody's going to play the white. That means the gold tees were added. We added 40 yards normally to those set of tees. So in that example, to the gold rating in the system for that day of competition, we would need to raise the stroke rating by 0.2 strokes so that is equal across the field. So those are two ways you can manage around side games if you want to utilize 3-5 in your competitions. Also, I want to reiterate at this point that we need to foster more participation by allowing tees or all tees to be used. We've done many presentations at clubs talking about 3-5 specifically, because clubs have said, we've only utilized this one set of tees over and over and over, and that's all we'll do. And the reality was that we had one particular club that finally said, you know what, we're going to have three tee options. And what it did is it brought the participation up. People had more fun. And frankly, it brought people in that always wanted to play in this event, but never had a reason to because they knew they had no chance from the back tees because they knew they didn't hit it far enough. Now they were like, absolutely, sign me up. I want to be a part of this because I can play from tees that I'm comfortable with, and the big key here is I have a fighting chance to win. And so that's the key. You want everybody to have a fighting chance to win. And 3-5 makes that a possibility for all golfers at hand. Also, for those of you who are using USGA Tournament Management, 3-5 and TPP, 3-5 will be automatically managed for you, automatically in the system. There's already a setting in there for 3-5 where you can tell the system how you want those 3-5 adjustments made and what golfers you want them applied to. So let that system do it for you. You don't have to do this by hand. Let the tournament software utilize 3-5 for you and apply it automatically. And then lastly, the WSGA's motto for some years now is golf for everyone. And back to that foster participation, we want everybody to have an opportunity to play in their competitions and have fun. And we believe that, honestly, this section alone is that may be the key point to anything getting that moving along. That allowing people to play where they're comfortable is a key thing for people to go out there and have fun. And so that ties right into our motto of golf for everyone. So we hope you will take this knowledge back to your clubs and really put it into work. If you're going to allow those competitions between different tees, section 3-5 must be applied. It's not optional, because if it's not, then you would not be having the correct amount of strokes applied to those individuals. So with that, I told you we're meant to have these short. I'm sorry about all the technical difficulties we had. We'll definitely shore those up for the next one. I definitely would love to open it up to any questions we have. Also keep in mind that all the additional webinars we will be conducting are on our website, the WSGA.org. We'll continue to do these. We want to keep them short and sweet, like I said, 20 to 30 minutes, that you guys can go along in your day, but we will definitely always be hitting up on the key topics.